first case of the Omicron hybrid variant, dubbed XL, is identified in South Korea. This comes at a time when authorities are planning to further dial back distancing rules. President Joe Biden could visit Seoul for a summit. The meeting could happen next month when the U.S. leader travels to Japan for the Quad Summit. Putin claims Russia will achieve its goal of the Ukraine military campaign. Ukraine's president expresses concerns over Moscow's chemical attack and seeks help from the international community. Hello, it's good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea detected its first case of a coronavirus variant called XL, an Omicron strain first reported in the UK. The nation's daily tally was above 200,000 again, but the trend is still going down and schools are easing select measures. Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
South Korea on Tuesday confirmed its very first case of the new Omicron hybrid variant XL. The person was reportedly fully vaccinated with a booster shot and had no recent travel history, but tested positive on the 23rd of last month without any symptoms. The XL variant was first detected in Britain in February, and the number of such cases worldwide has since jumped to at least 66, according to the World Health Organization. Yet one expert says the new variant is not expected to have much of an impact.
So far as we've noticed that it is not more transmissible than the original variant. And also in regards to the severity it causes, I don't think it's any more severe than the original the variants as well. So I don't think there isn't a much to worry about the occurrence of XL subvariant.
Yet he added, as there could be more variants to come, health authorities need to keep a close watch. Meanwhile, the country reported 210,755 cases on Tuesday, almost double the tally from the previous day, which was much lower due to fewer tests over the weekend. This figure, however, is the lowest for a Tuesday for 5 weeks and keeps the nation's weekly average in the 203,000 range, which has been on a downward trend since mid-March. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry has decided to loosen social distancing measures in schools. Previously, all students in the same class as a confirmed case had to take 3 COVID-19 tests in the space of 7 days. But starting April 18th, only those with symptoms or those with high-risk underlying illnesses will have to take a test, and just 2 over 5 days. The preemptive rapid antigen test students had to do twice a week before coming to school ever since the new semester started will also change to just once a week. When it comes to the nation's reinfection rate, health authorities announced that 0.284% of the total confirmed patients have been reinfected more than twice. Among around 9.2 million accumulated cases from January 2020 to March 19th this year, 26,239 have been reinfected, and out of the number, 37 have contracted the virus 3 times. For further protection and control, South Korean health authorities are set to announce plans for a 4th round of vaccinations, focusing on high-risk groups. While 4th shots are already being administered, the country is aiming to expand the program to include more senior citizens. This comes while people aged 60 or older now account for around 20% of the new cases and 95% of COVID-19 deaths. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, while visiting Daegu, President-elect Yoon met with former President Park Geun-hye. He offered apologies over the impeachment and invited her to the inauguration. Lee Kyung-eun tells us more.
President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol passing through the security fence surrounded by a massive crowd and getting off at the new residence of former President Park Geun-hye in her hometown, the southeastern city of Daegu. It's his first time seeing his conservative predecessor, who was impeached and imprisoned after a probe led by Yoon himself. Park was recently released from prison on a presidential pardon and then spent some time in the hospital.
아무래도 그 지나간 과거가 있지 않습니까? 어떤 이제 인간적인 안타까움과 또 마음속으로 갖고 있는 제 또 미안한 마음 그런 것도 말씀드리고 있고.
The 15-minute meeting was, quote, warm and amicable with some laughter too, as they seemingly put to rest their rather uncomfortable past, which could help the conservatives as they compete in local elections coming up in June. Yoon mainly talked about Park's health and the city of Daegu, a place where Yoon also has roots, having previously served there as a prosecutor. Yoon has also highlighted his respect for Park as a leader and formally invited her to his inauguration.
The president-elect talked about how he hopes to build on and promote Park's achievements and policies to redeem her honor.
The president-elect cordially invited Park to the inauguration ceremony if her health permits. Park says she's not confident that she'll make it, given her current condition, but she'll try to attend.
Prior to the visit, Yoon hit several spots in the city, thanking people, 75% of whom voted for Yoon for giving him the extra push he needed to win an extremely tight race. Among these places were Seoul Traditional Market, a place from where both Yoon and Park feel they derive energy, as they reportedly said in their talk. Addressing merchants there, Yoon vowed to strengthen the middle class, people like themselves, so they can once again be one of the very pillars that support the whole economy like the big conglomerates. Young은, Arirang News.
Names for almost half the cabinet has already been announced. The incoming leader will soon reveal nominations to fill out remaining key posts. Those would include the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Unification. Yoon Jung-min provides a glimpse of what to expect.
More nominations are likely to be announced soon for President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's cabinet, including the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Unification. Yoon announced 8 nominees this past weekend, and he's expected to announce the remaining 10 on Wednesday. Lawmaker Park Jin of the People Power Party will reportedly be nominated as foreign minister, and it's widely speculated that lawmaker Cho Tae-yong will be tapped as ambassador to the United States. Both of them were part of the delegation Yoon sent to the U.S. recently. To head the Ministry of Unification, lawmaker Kwon Young-se and former Vice Unification Minister Kim Chun-sik are reportedly among the candidates. Other top posts likely to be announced include those for the Justice Ministry, the Education Ministry, and the Ministry of Interior and Safety. Politicians are likely to be excluded from the candidates for the Justice Ministry and the Ministry of Interior Safety to guarantee political independence ahead of local elections in June. Nominations for presidential secretaries could come separately from the cabinet posts, possibly later this week. There's a chance that Yoon could name as his first chief of staff Kim Dae-gi, who served previously as senior secretary for economic affairs and chief of staff for policy under the Lee Myung-bak administration. Once all the nominations for the President-elect's cabinet are in, preparations will speed up for their confirmation hearings at the National Assembly. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
President-elect Yoon's transition committee hinted at a massive change in the country's energy policy and its path towards carbon neutrality. The team emphasized that the current model is just not sustainable. Kim Do-yeon explains further.
The Presidential Transition Committee says the country's current energy policy needs significant changes, as the current President Moon Jae-in administration's policies for energy are too much of a burden for the general public. That's according to the chairman of the Planning Committee for President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol, Won Hee-ryong, and its member Kim Sang-hyuk on Tuesday as they forecast the incoming administration's energy policies. According to the committee, in 3 years, South Koreans could be paying more in electricity bills and at an exponential pace. Its forecast saw bills jumping up more than $20 a month by 2030 compared to now, and by 2035 it could be more than doubled. In addition, the committee said the rise could even lower the GDP by 0.5% annually until 2050. To avoid putting unnecessary financial pressure on the citizens, Chairman Won added that even the nation's year 2030 nationally determined contribution target of a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas could be adjusted. Among the policy changes announced to tackle the situation was the incoming administration's will to balance the use of sustainable energy and nuclear energy, something that was widely expected.
For a long time in South Korea, there has been a structure that puts sustainable energy and nuclear energy up against one another. But that shouldn't be the case. The two should each play their roles. Outside of Korea, this is called a low-carbon alliance. Just because we go one way, it doesn't mean the other one has to go by the wayside.
In the international community, countries like France are balancing green energy and nuclear energy, while Germany is even going to close its last remaining nuclear energy plant this year.
So I think it's a tough choice whether to look for the short term or the long term. I think the answer always lies in the smart mix of what's in the middle. I think that this new administration, because of what has happened in the COVID situation and the long-term requirement, they opted for kind of leaning towards more French model rather than the Germany model.
The Transition Committee says while the incoming administration is looking to mix energy policies and change some measures, its efforts towards working with the international community to achieve carbon neutrality will not change. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Joe Biden could visit South Korea next month when he's set to attend the Quad Summit in Tokyo. Before that, high-ranking officials from Washington are reportedly coming to Seoul next week to discuss North Korea issues. For details, let's turn to our Kim Da-mi.
U.S. President Joe Biden could be coming to Seoul for a first summit with South Korea's President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol next month, sometime around the time Biden is in Japan for the Quad Summit. According to Reuters, Biden said when speaking to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during virtual talks on Monday that he is looking forward to meeting him in Japan on or around May 24th. If Biden does come to Seoul around then, it'll be the soonest a U.S. leader has visited any new South Korean administration. An official from South Korea's foreign ministry said Tuesday Seoul will welcome Washington's offer of a summit regardless of time. Yoon's top envoy, who traveled to the U.S. last week, also said the allies agreed on the need for a summit at an early date. Following the latest 8-day U.S. visit by Yoon's delegation, Washington's top nuclear envoy Sung Kim and Deputy U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Jung Pak will reportedly come to Seoul early next week. Kim is expected to sit down with South Korean counterpart No Kyu-duk during his 4-day visit. Discussions on North Korea policies with Yoon's Transmission Committee will likely top the agenda. The two sides are also expected to exchange views on how to deal with additional military activities by North Korea, especially ahead of Pyongyang's 110th birth anniversary of the regime's founding leader Kim Il-sung this Friday. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
America sent a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, into waters near South Korea in an apparent show of force to deter possible provocations by Pyongyang. Seoul and Washington also started a preliminary military drill ahead of their full-scale joint exercises. Bae Eun-ji has the full story.
The U.S. Navy's Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is in the East Sea in response to signs of North Korea resuming nuclear tests. According to sources, it is currently in international waters east of South Korea's Ulsan city. The U.S. Naval Institute also said Monday local time that the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group had entered waters between South Korea and Japan. It said that after a resumption of missile tests by North Korea following a pause of several years, ICBM and nuclear tests are anticipated in the near term. This is the first time in more than 4 years that the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group has entered the East Sea, after a previous deployment there in November 2017. The U.S. Navy ship will reportedly stay in the East Sea for 5 days. When asked about the matter, the Defense Ministry did not give further details, but did confirm that it is currently in the international waters near the country.
It is in the international waters in the East Sea, but this is a U.S. strategic asset, so I don't think it would be appropriate for us to mention further details about this.
On Tuesday, South Korea and the U.S. kicked off crisis management staff training, a preliminary exercise ahead of a full-scale joint military drill. The exercise will last for 4 days until Friday. The two countries will likely hold the main drill or computer-simulated combined command post training next week from April 18th to 28th. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea's missiles are a concern, and the regime has the capability to reach NATO territories. That's coming from Admiral Rob Bauer during a press conference on Tuesday. The chair of the NATO Military Committee, who is currently in Seoul, said NATO is working with the international community to achieve the North's denuclearization. Regarding the situation in Ukraine, he said it's up to Seoul to decide whether to provide military supplies. Bauer discussed the matter with the Korean government and added that the nation's stance is only providing non-lethal aid. He also reaffirmed that although NATO will do everything possible to support Ukraine, it will not be deploying fighter jets or troops there. Russia is reportedly raiding more forces in the eastern part of Ukraine in a bid to achieve its goals. With concerns over the attack, including the potential use of chemical weapons, President Zelensky asked for more help from the international community. Choi Min-jung has the latest.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Moscow's military operation in Ukraine will achieve its, quote, noble aims. Speaking at an award ceremony at a Russian spaceport on Tuesday, Putin said Russia's military operation was launched to protect his country. He also added that the fight was inevitable.
On the one hand, we are helping and saving people. And on the other, we are simply taking measures to ensure the security of Russia itself. It's clear that we didn't have a choice. It was the right decision.
This comes as Russia is reportedly making moves to increase its military presence in the east of Ukraine, with massive strikes expected in the region. There have also been unconfirmed reports of attacks involving chemical weapons.
One of the Russian occupier speakers said that they might use chemical weapons against defenders of Mariupol. We consider it very seriously. I'd like to remind the world leaders that Russia's possible use of chemical weapons has been already discussed.
According to the city's mayor on Monday, there have been over 10,000 civilian deaths so far, and said the figure could double. Against this backdrop, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky pleaded for more help.
Unfortunately, we haven't received as many weapons as necessary to end this war faster, to completely destroy the enemy in our land, and to carry out the obvious tasks for each of our citizens, particularly the task of liberating Mariupol. If we had jets, a sufficient number of heavily armored vehicles, and the necessary artillery, we would be able to do it.
President Zelensky also said that Russian troops intentionally left thousands of mines when retreating from northern Ukraine. He considered the act as a war crime, adding to around 5,800 alleged cases currently under investigation. Meanwhile, Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer sat down with Putin in Moscow on Monday and gave a grim account of their conversation.
I genuinely have no optimistic impression that I can report to you from this conversation with President Putin. The offensive is evidently being prepared on a massive scale, which is why I made very clear that stable access for the International Red Cross is needed.
He then stressed that sanctions on Moscow will continue, which would mean long-lasting damage for Russia. Currently, the EU is looking to increase its supply of weapons to Ukraine and is drafting proposals to sanction Russian oil imports as its step to pressure Moscow. Japan on Tuesday also imposed additional sanctions by freezing the assets of nearly 400 Russian citizens, including those of Putin's two daughters. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
According to Standard & Poor's, Russia has defaulted on its foreign debt, having attempted to pay for $2-denominated bonds in rubles. The credit rating agency characterized the attempted payment as a selective default, meaning Moscow did not default on its entire debt, but its creditors would be unlikely to be able to convert rubles into the original amount that was due. Those payments were due on April 4th. The state-owned Russia Railways has been officially declared by international banks as in default on a bond payment due last month, in the first such decision since the Ukraine invasion began. The declaration was by the EMEA Credit Derivatives Determinations Committee, which was asked just hours later to also rule on the sovereign debt S&P said was in selective default. Economies in Asia are projected to see higher growth this year than other regions, specifically ASEAN plus South Korea, Japan, and China. Seoul is expected to see 3% growth, but those figures could all see headwinds from global uncertainties. Kim Hyun-sung helps us look beyond the digits.
South Korea's economy in 2022 is projected to grow at a rate of 3%. and consumer prices are expected to grow at a similar pace, a projected inflation of 2.9%. The latest forecast came out Tuesday from the ASEAN Plus 3 macroeconomic research organization, also known as AMRO. ASEAN Plus 3 includes 10 Southeast Asian countries, plus South Korea, Japan, and China. AMRO says that from 2020 to 2021, South Korea showed a strong rebound, with a growth rate year-on-year nearly quadrupling. This growth has been backed by high demand for semiconductor exports and a revival of domestic consumer spending. But while projecting 3% growth for South Korea this year, it said risks remain, such as newly emerging COVID-19 variants and inflation. These risks could cloud the prospects of other Asian economies too. The whole of the ASEAN Plus 3 region is expected to register a growth rate of 4.7% this year. That's 1.2 percentage points lower than the estimate for last year. Consumer inflation in the region is projected at 3.5%. Some of the same risks affecting Korea apply to the wider region: the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, which is pushing up prices of energy, food, and commodities, while disrupting supply chains. With so many uncertainties ahead, AMRO suggests that policymakers in the region act prudently by not withdrawing support for their economies prematurely, but insulating them from risk. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Incheon International Airport ranked second in the world for international freight volume, moving up a spot from 2020. According to Airports Council, international volume through Incheon increased 18.6% on-year in 2021 to more than 3.2 million tons. Hong Kong International Airport topped the list. Shanghai Pudong International Airport was third. Asheville Jackson Atlanta International Airport was the busiest in terms of passengers. 8 of the top 10 for passenger traffic were airports in the U.S. Data reveals an encouraging trend of recovery from the pandemic as the number of global air passengers jumped almost 25% on-year. While many countries around the world are gradually lifting COVID-19 related travel restrictions, a major international aviation legal seminar is being held in South Korea. The focus is on boosting recovery of the industry in the post-pandemic era. Ji-young tells us more.
With borders reopening and international travel picking up again, the global aviation industry is gearing up for a major rebound from the COVID-19 crisis. Key decision makers and legal experts from the global aviation sector have gathered in Seoul for the 2022 International Civil Aviation Organization Legal Seminar. The 3-day seminar held in Seoul is the first face-to-face meeting of its kind since the start of the pandemic, with some 800 officials from a dozen nations exploring how to move forward in the post-pandemic era. Governed by the UN, the ICAO, which is made up of 193 member countries, got the seminar underway on Tuesday in cooperation with South Korea's Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. The goal is to facilitate a quick and full return to pre-pandemic air traffic levels, but with safe protocols in place.
We need to promptly recover the harmonization of the requirements for international travel and be able to give assurances to governments, health authorities, the traveling public, that the protocols in place cover sufficiently the need or the risks that are generated and are safe.
The Secretary General also congratulated South Korea on 70 years in the ICAO. At the event, the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport noted the aviation industry's efforts that have been in place to cope with the pandemic.
For the recovery of the aviation industry, governments around the world have come up with many support measures, including financial aid. They have also eased restrictions to turn grounded passenger fleets to transport cargo. And to overcome the struggles and keep the aviation network alive, countries have created travel bubbles.
He added that South Korea, ranking 5th globally in terms of aviation traffic volume, will continue to help boost cooperation.
The country plans to secure an 8th term at the ICAO Council to contribute more for the advancement of the aviation industry. 엄지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Clouds are increasing tonight with on and off showers across central regions. By tomorrow morning, showers will have spread nationwide. With the help of the cold rain, then seasonable heat will start to taper off tomorrow. Rain will last until Thursday, so make sure to have your umbrellas handy when you're heading out. This round of rain will help ease off the prolonged dryness. Pockets of heavy rainfall will be falling for Jeju Island with up to 60 millimeters in the forecast. Southern Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces can expect 5 to 40 millimeters. Relatively lighter showers are in the forecast for the capital Seoul and rest of inland regions with about 5 to 10 millimeters. Morning lows will range from 10 to 17 degrees nationwide. Seoul will start off at 13 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 16 degrees. Chuncheon 14, Daegu and Busan will make it to 17 degrees. After the rain, a surge of cold air will filter into the nation and temperatures will return to the seasonal norms. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. Thank you for watching.